So holding, so this is Shir beyond Beis Yudalad Earl Tesvov Tamuz Hemshechayim Beis Pelik Aleph Maimed Dibra Maschil Wa'eya Etzlei Omein Pasha Bamidbo Tov Reish Ayin Dalad Omud Tov Samach Gimel. Right, so we go down to the union of the union of Bittul the Chochmah was a Bittul Davke Mitad. What we saw was called a Yediyah Davke. In other words, agam that the Bittul of Chochmah is Riyas Hamahus Elakus. Arizeb B'chinas Bittul Amiti Mikol Mokem. Arizeb Bittul Shemetada Yediyah Davke. We're holding on Tov Sama Gimel, a little more than 2/3 of the way down the Omud. It's one on the teach from the Shloach Kodesh. What he teaches is Ze Keili V'an Vehu. So the word V'an Vehu makes Ani Vehu. It's one on that he teaches in the Pasuk the Shloach Kodesh. They teach that if it's Elokei Avi. Ze Keili V'an Vehu Elokei Avi V'Reima Memenhu. If it's only Elokei Avi, that your whole case was Elokus only mitzad tradition and what you want Kabul from your forefathers, then V'Reima Memenhu, he's all the time higher than you. He always remains above you. I believe it's Ze Keili, Ze is a unit from this. Ze Keili, that you're misbainan and you have a knowledge in Elokus, and you say Ze, then Aniva Hu, V'an Vehu becomes Aniva Hu. So that's the text that the Rebbe is referring to. If it's Ze Keili, if it comes in even from Gilui and even of Yediyah to the Adam, then it becomes Ani Vehu. The Bittul Hu begins Ani Vehu Chad. That even though there's two entities, there's the Adam Lamata, what he's the Ani, and there's the Hu of the Eibishter. What it's well known that Hu is indicative of the Helim, something which is Behelim and Mudal Gamre. You call it Hu. Nonetheless, and the Ani is Tachlis Agile Eitzel Adam. Nonetheless, the Ani Hu Chad, they become one. And he becomes a bottle with Nichlal in Elokus. Nonetheless, Mikol Mokim Zehu Davki Adidei Ze Keili. This Ze is Gilui, and Keili becomes my Zach. Beginas Yediyah. A commission is Boli, or Perek Lamed Ches, or Perek Kuf Samach Gimel. The road there is Masbud. That's the Mila, the Bittul of Chochmah. That even though it's a Bittul B'm Etzem Amahus, and a Bittul Amiti B'chinas Bittul B'metzias, but that's a mile of Re'iyah. Nonetheless, the etzem concept of Re'iyah itself is a form of Yediyah. When you see something and it's known to you, and it's Pugolo. It's not just a Ayin of Emunah Bilvad, like we saw earlier, the reference to Emunah Pshuta. But Emunah Pshuta has its own milas, but it's not a Ayin for Yediyah. It's not Ayin of now, not to confuse that word with the Yediyah with the Inin of Asoga. That was the point we made at the end of the last class, that the Inin of Asoga is another idea. Or that's the Inin where the mensch is already massig, a Inin al Pisichloi Hu. And that's got all the Hagbolas of Seichel and the Hagbolas of the Odom, Mitzad Kishrein the Sichloi. Mashenkin, the Inin for Yediyah means an information which comes in an aware fashion. The mensch becomes aware of it, even to the point that he can observe it, Baruchnias, he can see it, even from Re'iyah. But it's not a union of understanding, Aldecha, Haseichel. Therefore, it doesn't have the limits of Derech Haseichel. No, it's a inyan of Bitul in Elokus to the inyan that he and Atzmus Elokus become hard. But nonetheless, it's in the form of clarity and yediyah to the other, and that's what he was malba over there in Kosamach Gimel. But that's the inyan of the Bitul of Chachma being davke the Bitul b'mahus. Mehus Habitul, even though even for Yediyah Eitala Aoda. When that was even for Re'io. Im came, Masha Chochma Nikra Pele, Ein Ze Mitzad Atzmoi. We're coming back to the thing that we developed in the whole chapter, that the Inen from Chochma is Gilui. Dafke Inen from revelation to the Makablim, albeit even from Mahus and in an even which is neither than Hasoga, also of its Gilui and Mamish Gilui. Therefore, he said that would nonetheless a posik calls Chochma ki asisa fele, and we say that's referring to Chochma. Whatever we call Chochma Pele is not in the Etzem Inyan from Chochma itself. Because the Etzem Inyan Chochma is a in from Gilui. Rak mipnei she ma'alemes lo'era kesat. The Chaver say, how come we use the expression that Chochma is a inim from Pele, or that we saw in the previous Drushim, the two previous Maimorim, actually three previous Maimorim, we saw this whole concept of how Chochma Stimor BMS is a lavush, even though it's not an emesin from the slapshus, it's not an emes a helem or lavush, but it's what we call a kisui atzmi, that the etzem pnimis hakeser, which is tainug, becomes ayin, which is kilu malim on itself, even though it's really hainu hak, but it's another way. It's like another ponim that it takes on itself, regabi the makablim. And that's what we saw, one of the big chidushim here in the Hemshech of Ayin Beis, that Chochma, albeit Chochma is a sphira b'fnei atzmai, Chochma is a gilui, reishis a gilui, b'elam atzilus, with all the inyonim of a le'idoch, the atzmius, mokev v'shoresh of Chochma, is tainu. And the inyan of the koyach ha-Chochma is really tainug in another form. It's how oineg goes into another, takes on another shape, as it were. Of really the atzmius of Chochma is oineg. But just at the gabi, the makabel, it's a form of yediyah which begins the whole process ultimately of teichel. Of the emerson, Chochma is not teichel. The emerson, it's a lavush atzmi of the inner oineg. And therefore we see that that's what's mavur barichas in the famous Hemshech, Samach Tasamach. At the beginning, the Rebbe makes a difference over the barichas between oineg and simcha. And he says that oineg is ein tainug, is ein atzmi, mitzad the atzmi is dafke ein van aliyah, with dveikas. I was told here siluk, ein van oineg. The ilu simcha, the yerida in Tekashim is agur, for dafke, yerida how do you call it, his batu, it's mitbatei, dafke in the eivorim achitainim, well, that's the inyan van simcha. And he's much over there that the inyan van simcha is shy to bina, eima bonim smecha, ve'ilu, Chochma is shy to that inyan of oineg. And Chochma is in effect an expression and an inyan gilui, a form of kisui, atzmi to the inyan of oineg. And therefore we see that when the mensch, and that's what we see the Chassidus stresses the whole time, sometimes almost to the point that it looks to be sort of, going almost beyond itself to tell you that the emes oinig and the emes fulfillment of a mensch is when he's misanig alidei Chochma elokis, when he understands the immediate sinin of elokus. Prefer how it is mitzad the inyan from Chochma. Mitzad the inyan from re'iyah the Chochma, but this is the emes oinig, and there's no greater oinig and no greater tainug and no greater what you might call inyan in Chayei Adam Mizeh. That's kilu b'negeh elo. As an individual, this is the highest shleimus what can be. And therefore we see in many of the works of the Rabbeim, they're mafli the inyan of Yisaskis b'muskola is dafke muskola is talking the Loshen. And the inyan, because dafke they say you come to the Amitis Oinig, or that Lavush leads you in, because it's really the same thing. It leads you into the Emsa Inyan of Oinig. And that's what he's masba over there. That's the whole Inyan of Samach to Samach. Re'im Ma'uvim, that the whole Inyan is ultimately to bring everything down Lamata into the Inyan of Simcha. And so was the Amshocha Lamata Mata of Amitius, Advekis, Amitius, Iskashas. But all the Inyanim, it does is Alidei Oinig, Davkin, so the Inyan from Oinig and not Simcha. However, that's what we could suggest that he means here, that the Inyan of Chochmah, how it is B'Shor Shoi, is a Lavush Atzmi, well that's what he's going to say here, that it's really Ayin from Oinig. And therefore, what we see by the great Bali Haskalas, that whenever they got a new Haskalah, that they were, their whole their Gesicht, as they say, their whole way of appearing altered. Mitzad the fact that Oinig is a Koech Machif and a Koech Otzum, that it's able to alter the mensch altogether, and that's the famous Loshen in the Yerushalmi that Rabbi Abuhu, the Motza Teisefte Chadato, and Tzohavu Ponov, and he became like, lit up, yellowed, I don't know how to use the expression, illuminated in his whole face. And if you look up in the Yerushalmi, I once looked up in the Yerushalmi, it's a Pildik Maza. Steht dort, the Rabbi Abu, he was a Talmud of Rabbi Yochanan, as well known. Rabbi Yochanan was a Rosh Hashiva, and now so, he stayed, the Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Abu, and some of the Talmudim were going B'derech. And Rabbi Abu went ahead with a couple of the other Talmudim, they went ahead to be, Vedic Zadrochim, V'chula, they went Farois, and they met up with a Matronisa. The Matronisa means a Goisha baroness, or I suppose a big knob from the Romans, of a Dafka Nakeva. They met up with her on the way, and she said, she met this Rabbi Abu, and she looked at him, she said, who are you, man? What's your business around here? And he said, I'm just going on the way. He said something not committal, and she said, well, I didn't know that there was any Seicharei Chazirim in this area. I didn't know that there was anybody who dealt with, used to sell Lahodim to Vorim Vacherim in this area. So he was taken aback. What did she mean? She said, I can see on you that you must be one of those Seicharim. So he was, to say the least, insulted Rabbi Abu by that, but he just sort of tried to know it's better not to get into trouble with these. So he sort of went on, and she goes further along the way. She's going back the other way, and then she meets up with Rabbi Yochanan. And he's surrounded by some of the Talmidim, and she says to Rabbi Yochanan, what are you doing? You guys are Yidden, what are you doing with you got this Talmud that he's a Seicher Chazirim. So Rabbi Yochanan says, what's the raya that he's how do you know? This is minor Talmud, the ones that she met up the road. She said, oh no, his face is all lit up. He's all so illuminated. And she said, in this whole country, the Seichei Chaserim, they don't have any business. She said, if a Seichei Chaserim sells something, then his whole face lights up. He just becomes completely different. Mirev Simcha, Mirev Chedva, that he managed to sell something. So she said, he looks just exactly like that. So all the Talmudim were all barash. What sort of a? So Rabbi Yochanan just sort of nodded his head. Rabbi said, I know what happened. He said, Rabbi Avu must have found a Tosefta Chadato. He said, I'd give one a Tosefta Chadato. When he finds a Tosefta Chadato, he just goes, he just lights up, and he looks completely different. By her Megushim Dike Seichel, she thought but that reminds me of another thing, but if I would tell you that, then I'd be getting out of the boundaries of this class. But what it means is that you can't rely on the Megushim Dik Kop from a Goy. A Goy's Kop is Megushim Dik at the best of times, so you can't rely on it. You mustn't rely on it. But that's basically the.
But she saw it. She saw it, so she must.
Yeah. So you're right. There's something that she saw. Yeah, she saw the difference. Yeah, you're right, Daniel. I mean, it's a defense of her that she was able to see that there was something very different about him. Yeah, but what I meant to Megushim was the way she touched it out. In other words, let's put it this way: that they're able to see things, so the way they touch them out, they'll be very careful.
She used to say, she never saw you before that. She saw a goyim and.
Right. In other words, you got to be very careful with who the goy touch the site. That's the whole trouble today. Anyway, let's not get involved. Erefa says the Rebbe. והנה ליהו פרק, ואם כן, מה שהחוכמה נקרא פלא אין זה מצד עצמו, רק מפני שמעלמס לעיר הכסר. It's not that she's מעלים to עיר הכסר. It's not she's a הלם on כסר. והנה ליהו פרק ריש קוף ד' נסבור דהלם זה, שהחוכמה מעלמס עיר הכסר, אין זה כמו לבוש המעלים. It's not that she hides Kesser, ki ma sha'oinig nase beginnes Chochma. That mamish, the oinig becomes Ayin shel Chochma, ubezehu mis aleim, and therefore the oinig literally hides itself in the Inen of Chochma, but not in a lavush hamarim, because really it's Hainu Hach, and that's what the Rebbe says, that if you get into Muskolas, you get so bound up with the Inen Vainig that you can't possibly tear away. But that's the different stories and the different Inyonim about the great Balei HaSokas. Ve'im kein, a-helem u'b'chinas helem atzmi. Helem atzmi means that is really the etzem, but you just don't notice it because it looks differently. Those are the taich helem atzmi. U'b'chinas sosu mitzad atzmi. However, it's got in itself, as it were, a drawback that since that's the thing itself, it's not just something which is covering it, and therefore it's kilu. It's a very strong form of sosu because that steamer is the very essence of the thing itself, and therefore you can, as it were, get lost. You can take the chitzenis and not be niknas ela pinimias. And that's what he means, the sosa mitzad atzmoi. In other words, the way you have a lavush amalim, and you are yechilas to take away the lavush amalim, then you get to the zach how it is. Yeah? Over here, that lavush and the thing are really one and the same. They're really one and the same minyan. So if it hides itself, then it's hiding itself inside its own self. In other words, it's appearing to be another inyan. Remember, that's what you might call. It's even more than hide and seek. Yeah, it's more like the etzem appearing in another oifen or another form, which is really the same etzem. What Lefizeh Kunto is that when the Eibishter made a man and he made the whole seder, the koiches of a mensch, he really began with himself. Or if we take it how it is in the nefesh. He begins with the very essence of the nefesh. Remember, the koiches are not, whatever the koiches are called tikkunim, or they're called ornaments. They just beautify what is the etzem. The etzem beautifies itself alidei the zinyonim. You're locking it up. Very good. So we'll promote you. So we might have thought of being introducing a knas. If we see that, then we promote you. Erefa, come to it, that what happens here is that the etzem puts on another look at itself. Erefa, the same with a mensch. Your development of all your koiches begin with chokmah. Chokmah is the very essence of your etzem, just appearing in another way. That it is that the Eibishter with chokmah, he's just looking for another way to come down with his whole essence into you. Yeah, therefore it's interesting that the Alter Rebbe calls in the whole of Tanya the Alter Rebbe calls the Eser Koiches, he calls them Etzemanev. Ad Kedi Kach, he has to, in Lekutei Torah, the famous Lo Yisash Melech, right in the beginning of Lekutei Torah, Parsha Vayikra. The Alter Rebbe goes out of his way to explain it. That's what I called the Eser Koiches Etzemanev, בספר התניא, אין הכוונה שהם העצם ממש, אלא יש למעלה מזה שהוא העצם הממש וכולו, ואף הוא פי קורוסי איסון עצם and he warned her that there really is a higher in the עצם, this is the Yechida, and the Rebbe says even למעלה meze is the עצם. And if that's the case, then I'll call him the עצם. Well, I have to say, this is a Darga Shebenever. And then you want to write another sefer to tell people that there's another Darga Shebenever. Okay, I caught the, Atzmius and everything, Atzmius is a simon. The Cholila V'chasi Alter Rebbe he wasn't writing something which was, misleading, or he was like making a Maremochim to another place. Well, that in effect is the Eman. The Eser Koiches are in effect the Etzemanev. And therefore the Spheres, the Eser Spheres Lamaila, or they are Iu Chayeu Chad, Iu Gamayeu Chad, and they are the infant Rosa de Mehemanusa, and all the Inyonim. The Eser Spheres are really Gilui HaAtzma. And therefore Olam HaTzilas is the Eivishter. Olam HaTzilas is not Cholin V'chas, a world. Olam HaTzilas is the Eivishter. Now it's the Etzem, how it begins coming down towards you, and it just puts on what you might call another phase. Or an Imson to Sidiet.
Alles is Eibishter. Everything's Eibishter.
Huh?
Everything's Eibishter.
Yeah. Everything's Eibishter.
So what's the big
what's
the big thing that here?
What we're saying is, exactly, that's what we're trying to say. And that's what the Rebbe said there in Reish Kofei. That what he said is, that really, the Golus is the Geula. That's what we learned. He said, really, the Golus is the Geula. The Golus is another phase for what is really the Geula. The real Etzem Elokus, right? It's just hiding inside this which is not a Lavud. It's Kiluim in another form.
So this is the first time, what they're trying to say?
It's like that with everything.
Is this mime, the Nakud of this mimer, is that this is the first Madrigal, so that's the Shinoi Panim is there. It's the first time there's the glory of this Shinoi Panim.
Yeah. It's all just...
This is the first time this happened.
It just changes of face. Panim, not even Panim Chatosh, it's Panim Yishtanes. And what's the famous lesson? There's another lesson that occurs. It's written taught by the in Pasha Koira. The Alter Rebbe brings down in Lekutei Torah that there was this min that he asked Rav Akiva, wie is he gegangen? And said sometimes he said, how does it work? And Diva Shechina ben Shnei Badi Aron or something, and his molecule is Koida. So Shemaim was ordered. He said, how can that be? So Rav Akiva said, Moshe Lamar is Gedolos, Lamar is Ketana. Moshe Lamar is Gedolos, Lamar is big mirrors and small mirrors. So the Alter Rebbe says, that's not the pshat, the mirrors. The mirrors are not important. What do you mean what you see in the mirror? In a mirror, there's sometimes, I remember when we were kids, used to go into a circus, and all of a sudden you'd walk up and you'd see these mirrors, and you'd be huge, you'd be long, and you'd all be drawn on your face. It'd be about 4 meters long, and you'd go for about 20 meters long, and your legs and everything. So now all of a sudden you would come to another mirror, and you'd all be the other way around. You'd all be all quetched, and you'd all be a few centimeters high, and all your face was all quetched. It's called Maris Gedolos and Maris Ketanis. So the Rabbi Akiva answered that min that way, and he said that that's Maris Gedolos and Maris Ketanis, which means it's all the same. It's all the same Tamuz, but it's just it's a different form. That's what the answer is. That when the Avish are talking Mishnei Badiaran, when he's in Olam HaTzilas or when he's in Akka, it's all exactly the same. It's just Maris Gedolos and Maris Ketanis. Remember, that's what's written here. And the first said that Chochma, and that's all the same thing. Why? Because shehi b'pchinas helem be'etem. Now, when he says it's helem be'etem, it means that the etem is misalim in that. So that's an emes helem, legavi the makablim, because the etem is doing that. Oh, but really, it's not a helem in the normal sense, because nothing is being milim on nothing. It's only that the very essence is changing its way of appearing legavi the makablim. So therefore he says, but there are klal ha'ikru b'chinas chochma.
What's the difference between that and Soshim B'tzar Atzmo? What's the difference between Helem and
in other words, it's Soshim B'tzar Atzmo. It means that he's the one making the Helem, not that something is being malim on him that you don't see. You got that down? Soshim B'tzar Atzmo means that he's making the Helem. In himself is the Helem.
So what's the difference between that and Helem Atzmi?
Yeah, that's the idea of Helem. That's what he means by Helem. That the Helem is mitzad him, not mitzad Eizador. And that's only, the Helem is only the way, as it were, he's looking at you. Or but really, if you look at him through that way he's looking at you, then you're getting to him in the same way, because Ayin and Chochma are all really the same mode. Just a difference in the way it appears to the Makabel. And that's what we mean, the Helem mitzad Atzmei, not mitzad Eizador. And the Father says that it follows that the Iki Neres Hu Chochma Stimoya. By Mashin Boil it's off the soft Tiba Maschel Dilshu. But over there, that's exactly what he said. He said that the Etzem Minim van Oinek becomes Chochma, and he said that the Etzem itself, he said the Etzem itself over there becomes Chochma. And he brings a raya over there in the brackets. You remember we had it at the end of the Dvar Pilim. But the Rebbe said that that's what it is the koyach hamoilid is dafki in the moya. The dafki, the koyach hamoilid, that he can have doirois, or that comes mitzad the yin from atzmius hamoya. So he said it for words. That's a koyach ha'ein sof. Only Evis can make a yesh miyayim. In other words, when you give rise to when you give birth to a child, you're making a new whole material. You're making a new entity. It's never been before. He said that's why the koyach ha'ein sof. It works through the yin and hamoya. It goes through the yin and the moya. That's what he said. That's exactly that. Chochma is a helem, or a way of looking, the way Atzmus looks at Lamata. And therefore, in your Chochma is the whole etem, the whole koyach of the etem of the Eibishter. And I remember we were medayik over there. That means that and it's written in Perek Ches in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says that Ayin safe is shura b'chochma kol mishiyeh miyisrael. That the inner from Chochma is nimtze shura Ayin safe is nimtze shura b'chochma shebenefesh kol echad v'echad miyisrael. When you walk around, you're walking around with Atmas Esav inside you. And so Nimtza, that the Shaila Eels wasn't with the human soil. What are they? And the fact is, we have to say, and that's what's stated in Toshin Aleph in a place, the Friedrich Rebbe, is Mazvah that the Umas or Elam, they also have a nefesh of sickli. And he said that nefesh of sickli is called B'tzelem Elokim. That's what Rabbi Akiva says. Choviv Adam Shenivra B'tzelem. Chiva Yisrael and Idas Lo Shenivra B'tzelem. Shenem B'tzelem Elokim also has Cho Adam. And then a few lines later he says Chaviv and Yisrael. So who is the Adam? Where's the Adam? So the Friedrich Rebbe writes that the Adam is the Goyim. The Adam is Umas Oilam, and they also have a union of Kilu, Ayin and Elokisha Behem. Over by Zayas, but Tatlisa, Helen Vea, Hester, Achet becomes Mernit, Ayin of Seichel Sheba in Yone Oilam. Aber I feel by say, how does the Gemara say Chochma begoyim tami? No, not the Gemara, the Medrash. Chochma begoyim tami, that there is a union for Chochma. And that Chochma is also, that's Kilu, the Tzelem Elokim Shabbat. And the ganze Sinne von Ayin is the Bonim. That's what he brings. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. The mile of Nidden is the union for Bonim. In other words, that union von Atzmias Alavush is by Yidden, that's the Ike, and therefore that causes everything, that makes everything in him function. And if even your normal seichel is really Ayin and Elokim. In other words, if you want, that's what it can be. Even that's what it can be. Therefore, I must say to you that when when those of us, we didn't really do what we should have done. Or those of us who heard the Rebbe speak, if you heard the Rebbe speak, then you knew that was eloquent. It wasn't just stuff. You could hear Divrei Elokim Chai. And the Maggid, he used to say, before he spoke, he used to say to the Talmidim, Yidden heret Seides HaTeira, heret Divrei Elokim Chai. In other words, when a great person talks, and his whole inyan, he's gone into that link of Atzmias, Elokus mit Chokmah, and he's got into it. When he talks, it's just Elokus talk. I'm sorry. And there was Cholila, huh? Why am I sorry? Yeah. Oh, I'm happy. Yeah. Gotta be careful, this guy, he keeps a close watch on him. Erefa, Lefi zeh kommt is that Emes Chacham, but Torah is when he talks with us. And there was an amazing thing. So I'm sorry for getting aside a bit on these inyonim, but it's very important. That there's a sefer, the Mishkistim gave out a sefer about Hakel, about all the things that the Rebbe said about Hakel. So the Rebbe says that, Mamish. I knew it was a Kabbalah by the cinema, but the Rebbe says it, Mamish. The Rebbe says that when you hear from the Nasi Ador, when he talks, that's pink to say, the Yidden were listening to the Melech reading in the Torah, in the Torah. When the Melech, he was a Melech Emes Al Pi Torah, when he read that was Mamish the Abish, the Torah was Mamish, and that's what the Rambam writes in the Hilchos Chagiga. The Rambam writes that when they heard the Melech read, Kiyom Shanitna B'Sinai, or Ki'ilu Shoimim Mipi HaGevura. That's what the Rambam. So the Rebbe said, what is it? Ki'ilu Shoimim Mipi HaGevura? He writes over that when a Rebbe says, Amayim Chassidus, that Shechina Medabers Mitoikroi. השיחה from him, לא ידעתי עד כדי כך.
famous Maimon by the I heard it with the Shem אני חושב Isaac Muhammad
in other words, Bayut Pshita.
No.
I don't blame you.
There was a Maisa. I think it was by the Tzimah Tzedek and Isaac Muhammad and Isaac Muhammad. Who is the Chassid?
Rav Hill?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Rav Hill. He's a B'shas Rebbe. The Rebbe brings it over in the Sikha. The Rebbe brings it. Very nice. The Rebbe brings it in the Sikha. Behem Shekadas. The Rebbe brings it. Rav Hill and he and Rav Peretz Chaim. They had an argument about the Pshat in Hamayim. They had an argument about what was shot in the Maimah. So in the end, they agreed to be let in. I think it was the Mittler Rebbe or the Tamuz Tzedek. And they got in, and the Mittler Rebbe told them what was the Amos of Pshat, and it was like Peretz Chainish of Hill. It was like Peretz. So when they got out, so Peretz said to him, no, you see, I told you so. So Rebbe Hill said, yes. He said, I heard. He said, B'shas the Rebbe zocht, Amayim, jeder Shechina medaberes b'tei aber der was a generation in the world. He said, make me sagen euch, uns make me euch sagen. He said, once it's gone out of the world, we're also allowed to say that can I come. Aber b'shas he says, Shechina medaberes b'tei there's Posha zog, lefi zeh, lefi what we're learning here, zeh mu'el kach, kach zeh b'pshitas atvorim. I know then, you got to be in a nogea b'shum davar. Cholila, if he's nogea באיזשהו פרט, he's got to be nagia, he's got to be zayin, השייכת kosher, it's blown. It can be nice, it can make sense of it, it's blown. A Rebbe is pure, he just says over the Divrei Elokim Chai. Why sometimes the big people, they think they differ, and they can't really, because they're chuzim ba'oid inyon. You understand? Hem chuzim ba'oid dvarim. Keser, what's talking is a form of an agia called shahi. When he speaks it. There we are, my gentlemen. V'hainu sha'chochma hu b'madregas ha'kesa mamish b'rozini v'nhelem bi'etem. In other words, it's the etem how the hell. I'm sorry. It's the etem how it's gone into helem. Or it's put itself. It puts on itself its own helem. Ve'inei v'derech klal ha'ikhu b'chinas chochma stimua. V'aymashin is bor li'il sotem ha'jeve. וגם זה הרי הוא מבחינת עליונה דחוכמה סתימורה, כמו שהיא מצד עצמוס המייצר. Remember, we reach a conclusion in these memorim that the emsem mamutza is chokma stimora. In one of the bechina עליונה שבחוכמה סתימora, that's what is makusha in Atik, in the tzad ha'elyon. Until we said pnimius abba hu pnimius Atik. So he said, Avo b'chinas ha'taktoina dechokma stimora. V'kol shechein b'chinas chokma ha'gluya da'atzilas.
Ha'ikar, actually, with the ikar, b'chinas derechal ha'ikar.
Loi yitachein.
What's the ikar? I mean, it says, b'derechal ha'ikar hu b'chinas chokma stimora. What's the ikar?
This element on the Atzmi. This what the Atzmi puts his face on in another way. Well, that's chokma stimora. And that's what we described as the union of the mamutza between Atik and the Nevoim. מצד עצמוס המייצר, אבל בכין תקטנה דחוכמה סתימורה, וכל שכם בכין חוכמה הגלויה דאצילוס, לא יתוכן לקרויס בשם פלא, because it's all come down into the gilui, to the makabla. It's not the pella. The pella is only where you're miyuchad with the helem ha'atzmi. Then it can be called pella. Or when you come down, then that helem ha'atzmi had a reason. It was in order to get down to the makabla. So once you already entered that whole tnua of the gilui to the makabla, you're not pella. On the contrary, you're going down to the makabla. And Eva says that lo yitochen. It's not shayach likrois b'shem pele. However, po in our new pshat that we brought down in the Zohar Kodesh, we see that the Zohar titles the Zohar ki yosisa fele, full stop, and then it says ki yosisa ale. And we saw that ale was the inner of chokma, how it's going down at the bina, and that's the inner of chokma, how it's gilui. That's the whole inner we're talking here. So we see that the pasuk does two things. It doesn't just say ki yosisa fele, al tikre fele ela aleph or something. It's not shoel dinim from pele. It says ki yosisa fele, and that means, what does that mean? Ki yosisa aleph. In other words, that the aleph itself is pele. So that's l'chera a steer of what we just said. וכאן מפרש החוק ונקרא פלא מצד עצמי דווקא. מצד עצמי meaning how it is בגולוי. והכוונה דווקא בבחינת הגילוי. והיינו בבחינת הגילוי דחוכמה נקרא פלא. So that's like a stirrer. It's like a stirrer מנהיהו. Make a pella means the helem ha'atzmi. And here we're saying that the chokma has already golui in atzilus for the makabli mamish or the bechina taktoina shebechokma stimora, which in Yoni is the mochel for chokma agluya. He said that's already not pella. He said, oh yes it is. That's called pella. Kosu ki asisa pella, that you made a pella ki asisa aleph. There's titles on that you made a inifan. If an aleph, what aleph is a inifan open at the beginning, open of a limud de chokma, the gilu of chokma mamish. How it's already become a shoyrish of limud into bina almost. Yeah, the chokma who is that in and of the limud of chokma who beginnes pelle, or is it inifan pelle? So it says, how can that be? Now, even though the Zohar is mafarish, I think when the Rebbe says mafarish, he doesn't mean the etzem shut on the kasha we just asked. It means that he's mafarish. What sort of way does chokma become aleph? It becomes like a teacher. Mafarish al zeh. Aleph Beis is aleph bina. that the word Aleph, and then it's followed by Beis, but that's the Seder, as it were, of the Limud. How does that work? Yeah, Aleph Beis means Aleph Bina, that the Beis is like a reference to Bina. And I've spotted in some places that Bina is already like a bias, it's built together of Protim. שזהו בחינת הגילוי דחוכמה שבו מייסד אבו לבינה. That's well known that which is nimshach, the bina is only what we call yesed abba. It's only the lower midas sheba abba, but they are the shurish, the ashpur, the nekuda, the heicholah enters into bina. Okay, al derabasho nekudas askola. In other words, at the higher aspects of chokmah, they're not the nekudas askola. As one known, that the actual Nakuda, the Baruch HaMavrik, but that's called Yesod, or sometimes it's called Nahi Chokmah, Neitzach Hoid Yesod. In other words, it's already the lower Ina, which is Shatu Ashpur. Remember he said Nakudas Askola, Shezeo Pchinas Seichu Golui, that's already revealed. Notice the whole theme here is Gilui, Shebo Lidei Asoga, the Bina. It reaches the ultimate Tachlis of Gilui, which is Mamish Asoga, Eitzel Adam. Yeah, Harizeh, Mibchinas Pele Davke. So the Rebbe says, what the Zohar is saying, but the fact that the Zohar first of all quoted the Posik B'Shleimet, and then it touched it again, and it said, Zeh ki Zevajesha Kosoki, Asisa Pele, Asisa Elev is a sin that both things are there. It's Taka Asisa Pele, but it is the union of Aleph Beis, the union of Chokhmah, how it goes down into Bina, that's Pele. So the Rebbe says, how is a thing which is already becoming Gilui into Bina, how is that Pele? It's revelation. Pele is mara on something which is hidden from you. Yeah, and therefore we say b'mufla mimcha al tidrois. We say it's not a posik, it's actually from the Sforim HaChitzeni. B'mufresh mimcha al tacher, or b'mufresh al tisha, or al tidrois. And remember, the union from Pele is a door which is mudal from and hidden from you. V'egiyam izeh hagilui. How can Pele be that which is nimshach in the Bina? It can't be. It's two inyanim. First of all, Asisa Pele is one inyan, and Asisa Aleph is another inyan. So there will be no, this is the pshat. If you look carefully in the Zohar, that it runs them one into the other, is assuming that even how Asisa Aleph, when the Aleph becomes a limud, a lupana, into Bina, that is Pele. So he said, how can that possibly be? So he says, Achzeu Shemavaya, said the fact that the Zohar Kodesh goes on and brings me a whole piece about what an Aleph looks like. He said, in that we have to say is hidden the teretz of this Shaila. Avo. He says, where are we? Ach, Zeu Shemavaya ba'imrei Avo diukna the Aleph ihu tlas sitrin, that the shape or the form of an Aleph is three lines. Dehine yedua the tzia tmunas Aleph yesh boi beis yuden. Yud Aleph lamaila, v'yud Aleph lamata, v'kav be'emtza amachav beis hayuden. That's the one on the famous story in Ayom Yom that the Alter Rebbe called in the Malam that he wanted to teach. He wanted him to teach his son. The Alter Rebbe said that he doesn't have time, so therefore he's making you a shliach to teach his son Torah. He said the first thing you have to teach him is Aleph. So the Alter Rebbe said an Aleph is a Yud Lamaila and a Yud Lamata and a Kav Be'emtza HaMachabra. You guys are not familiar. So he said the Yud Lamaila, this is the Avish, I think he said. And the Yud Lamata, this is a Yidl, he's Makabel from the Avish's Yud. And the Vav Be'emtza is a Kav from Yerushalayim. That's Mechaber, the both of them together. I say it now, we're going to see something. Huh?
And then he gave another Musaf.
Huh?
And then he gave another Musaf.
Not Yerushalayim?
And then he touched it out another one.
Amuna.
Yirat Shamayim is the second.
There's another one.
I think it says Amuna.
I know the story about the Yud.
No, that's the Perushi.
The same Yom Yom.
Yud Aleph Lamata v'kav באמצע המרחב בייס היודן. והנה יודו העליון הוא בחינת חוכמה שבחוכמה, שמקבל מאור הכסר, וכמה שכתוב והחוכמה מעין תימו. החוכמה שבחוכמה, that means already in חוכמה גלויה, חוכמה שבחוכמה. That's the pshat here. And that means what we said before, that Chachma is in from Re'iyah. The emes how do you call it, Al-Yoinias, Shebachachma is in of Re'iyah, and in Yoni which Alamayla me Seichel, Afil Gilui, from Seichel Nakuda, because the Nakuda is only Nahi, it's only Yisod Shababa. And look at the high in Yonim, and they're Makabel from the Ayin Dekesa, Chachma me Ayin Timor. And they're makabel from Chokmas Timur, or they're makabel from the lower aspect of Chokmas Timur, how he's already a mumutza to the spirits and Atzilas. And the truth of the matter is, it's mashma in certain Jerushim that also is through a parson as well. And therefore we say Chokma me Ayin Timotei, as if it were just a ashpoer, here b'derech Yerida or Ilava'ol, or mashu me Chokmas Timur, then it wouldn't be me Ayin Timotei. Now even from the parson turns it into like me Ayin Timur. Ayin Timotei. You have a whoopkidus Nakuda Iloa de Chokma. Now it's one under the two inyonim in Nakuda. It's one under two aspects or two forms of Nakuda. One Nakuda is called Nakuda Iloa. What that means is that everything is there, but it's so tremendously intense that it's not able to be mispateya b'shlav zeh. No, it's only the intensity of how it's called everything in one. Beetle otzum to the atzmas. Therefore, it's like one which is krill, really inanimate, but they're not able to be mizgala la'esato. Machine the nakuda, how it comes down into Yesod Abba and goes into Bina, well, that's already open to be opened, in other words, ready to be developed. And that's the function of Bina. The Bina literally undoes all the protim in the nakuda. That's two inyonim and two madregas in nakuda. Remember, nakuda iloa, well, that's that intense Indian of nakuda, which despite the protim shaboy, it's not in an even pitur of giroi cloud. And that's what we find, that chokma is sometimes a patach. Chokma is a patach, and sometimes it's a komet. When it's a komet, it is from koimich. Koimich means to close them out. In other words, that it's locked, it's not able to give forth. The chokma, how it's a patach, is it's already to be niftach. It's not niftach mamish b'regazeh, or it's already ready to be niftach. And there's a whole thing when you get to the kavanas from Shefer, where's that? Anani b'merchav ko, b'merchov ko, where's that? There's a whole different, the Friedrich Rebbe's got a whole beer and a maimah that you're supposed to say merchav ko. By the time you get down that far in the pussy, you're already holding by the nakuda, it's already shite, it's supposed to open down into Gilui. And Ve'ila, the Rebbe, I heard it, I was there, the Rebbe used to say merchav, but that's a comment with the scene from Kesser. That's scene from Chofra, it's still nakuda atzmi, it's called in Kesser. And those dini from Friedrich Rebbe says that Al Pia Baal Shem Tov or something, noch en loima Kedem Tchia Sefer in Pata. A Satan Amman. Satan Amman. Therefore, some of the Mashpiyim, and they'll say with a Pata. Of the Rebbe, Boro Kro. Ich habe gehört, Mamish, Boro, several times. The Rebbe used to say with the comment. And they stated in the Siddur, if you look in the Siddur, it's not a comment. But some people say that was that whoever printed the Siddur didn't know what was written in that Maimon from the Friedrich. Of the Rebbe certainly knew what was written in the Maimon from the Friedrich. Now for being the same Melchor. And that's all in it. And that's a two nakuda. That's nakuda love and nakuda tato. I'll go upon him. It said,
which one's the comments which one Patak?
A comments means.
I know which one, which is good. He's both of them. It's Chokmah Ra, Chokmah Takar.
Yeah.
Which one is Patak? Which was Kametz?
No. Patak means to open.
No.
That's already the lower Nakuda.
Well, that's the Kud.
And that's the Nakuda that's ready to, as it were, come down into his scholars. The Kudi is comments was from Famah. It's so intense that it can't open. It's the etzem meaning from his scholar. Etzem the Kudus are immense kid. Therefore, comments for the motzet to prepare means to learn. Yeah,
the surah of the Kametz is the Patak within the Kud.
Yeah, with a sort of line underneath it. Yeah, Ayin Chanamit. Ja, יש לדון גם בזה, אבל let's go further. אז the Rebbe, והוא בחינת נקודה אלוהי דחוכמה, ויוד התחתון הוא בחינת יסוד אבא, הוא בחינת מה שהחוכמה, הוא בחינת משפיע, בחינת נקודה אל הבינה. והיינו, א', בינה, das ist פשט learning and teaching, בינה. והקו שבאמצע הוא ווב קצובי דאבא, והוא הקו שדומה לבוא. No, we don't mean the kav in the normal sense. We just mean kav. We just mean it's a line, which is avov, and therefore that kav is a avov, indicating the midrash of Chacham. Now it's one on there are midrash of Chacham, even though they're not, but there are, and those are avov ketzovis of Abba, and that's what's brought down in Torah and other places. The Inif and Yisrael Sabo, and then Yisrael Zultra, Yisrael Sabo Utvuna. You guys are familiar with it, because we had it here in the Hemshah. Yisrael Saber, how he links into Tavuna, this is the Midrash B'chol. That's called Midrash B'chol. You have a Nimsa called Shir Tmunas Aleph, Miroisha V'Saifai, who is a Chochma. It's all Chochma. רק שיהודה האלה מבחינת חוכמה של חוכמה, והאבוב שהוא הקו הוא בבוב כתובת שבו, והיהודה תחתון הוא יסוד שבו, ועל זה העומק עשיס הפלא. On that he says that that's a פלא. The מבחינת החוכמה כמו שהוא, שהיא מבחינת א', the way it's teaching, and its whole aim is to get down into בינה, דהיינו מבחינת גילוי דווקא, הרי הוא מבחינת פלא. So how can that be? How can we can design? Va'inenu, this is already the beginning of a teretz. Va'inenu, dehina yudua, the chokhmah hu b'chinas koyach ma. That the whole inyan for chokhmah is koyach ma. So there's two ways of explaining that. Either you can say that it's two levels, that there's a inyan from koyach and then there's a inyan from ma. In other words, that chokhmah, it's already Yisod Abba, that's already koyach, it's already going down. A ma is the higher madrega. Or you can say that the whole inyan from Chokhmah, its whole koyach, its whole inyan, its whole oifen function is ma. Yeah? In other words, that kilo Chokhmah be'etzem is ma. So we'll see that we're sort of leaning towards that pshat. So he says, "De'ina yedua the Chokhmah b'chinas koyach ma. Uma hu shem havaya b'milui alefim." The word ma is mem hey 45, or that's the Shem Havaya if you write the milui of the letters with aleph. The yud doesn't have any aleph in it. Then you write k aleph, vov aleph vov, and then k aleph, and you add them all together. But yud vov daled, you add it all together, you get 45. And that's the Shem Havaya b'milui Aleph, and he brings it in the Siddur there on Friday when you say the Pasuk Aliyahu. He brings it down there in the Siddur. Hashem Havayis Hu b'Mila Aleph, U'Kamayma Milgav. That's how he gets onto it there, and he brings out there Iu Kakafta the Tefillin, and then he says Milgav Shem Iu Shem Ma. What does he mean Milgav? He means the pnimius of Atzil. That the whole Atzil is Chochmah. Is the pnimius milgav mibefnim iu shema. Yeah, in other words, that the pnimius of, and later on he calls it oirach hatzilas. It's like the whole way, the whole derech of hatzilas is the shema. Shezeu havaya di alefim. Well, that's even in Shem Havaya how it's literally filled with alefim. I know the aleph, the chokhmah hu b'chinas ma. If he's from Toys, how do you get to ma? Alidei to take the Shem Havaya and you fill it with aleph, and there's a statement that the key to ma is a aleph. Ubchinas ma shebechokma zo ubchinas pele. Or that in for ma shebechokma does it the pele. We see it on the one hand, Aleph is een van Aleph. Aleph is limud. On the other way, how do you get to the end of Ma? Which is a Be'emes Pele, is that you get to that through the end of Aleph. Let's kill the kesher. And Mamir said the Rebbe V'Hainu beginnes Ma shebegilu ha-chokhma. Lo beginnes Ma de chokhma שזה בחינה על יוינה שבחוכמה כמש כוס מוחים אחר כי אם הכוונה על בחינס מה שבגילו החוכמה כויח מה and there was a whole in of chokma how it's a koyach it's in and is ma. You're not thinking like we said that ma is already in from Kesa and koyach is another in. No, Davke Chokma is already a koyach. Or how she's a koyach, she's ma. How she's mamish begolo in another she's ma. So when it explains it to me, but it doesn't yet give me the beer age there, but it just tells me that that's the form here. Das ist der Indian Bekitzer Nimrat Adkar. So listen, I just want to take a couple of minutes, if you don't mind, to say one or two in Yonim. So what it means is that really the Emes Pele is bittul. As I can tell you. The Emes Pele is bittul. The way you have something that could have been a Matthias. It could be a Matthias. It could be a Matthias. And it says it's not a Matthias. I know he says it's not a Matthias. But now he wants to know what is with the Kavona. That's Emes Pele. Yoter Pele Mazelonim. And that's what we're going to see. He's going to go now on a whole beer and Toyova. What was the problem with Toyo? What was the problem with Toyo? Toyo was the highest Toyo that have ever been. Everything was toughness yofi in Toyo. As they say in Yiddish, because in Toyo it was, how do you call it, sag. Sag is Aish's gas. You know that. That was so. Toyo was Giluyim, and it doesn't work. It wanted to live the Giluyim. It wanted to have the Giluyim and live the Giluyim. On Tikkun is Ma. Ma just says, what was your will, the Eibishter? The Eibishter will Gilui. He wanted everything should come down. Well, the Gilui is Kol HaDrochim v'Cheskes. Actually, going down into Gilui. No, but if you bottle Be'etzem Tamuz, Bittul Dama, then you can go anywhere. Not Chassid. That's Chassid. You can go anywhere, you can do anything, as long as he's Mekushah to Rebbe, as long as he's bottled Be'emes to the Mitis and the Kuda. That's it, man. Thank you, my gentlemen. It's